"You have 15 minutes before everything you don't understand starts breaking," he said without raising his voice. Then Michael handed over his badge and walked out of that glass box of a room like he was just done for the day. No drama, no parting shots, no panic, just done. And I swear to God, in that moment, I felt the temperature in the server wing drop 10 degrees, like the ghost of operational stability itself had just left the building. Sierra blinked twice like she was buffering, then looked at Tanner, who was already scrolling through Slack like that'd help. I saw his fingers twitch. Mine did too, because I knew. I'd been at Caldwell long enough to understand one terrifying fact. When Michael Grant stops watching the grid starts watching you. Hey, quick pause before this gets worse. If you're even slightly hooked, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button and tap like. It helps the whole team survive the algorithm gods and keep bringing you stories like this. All right, back to the fallout. Michael wasn't flashy. Hell, half the company thought he was just the guy who made the coffee hot again after the break room outage in 21. But what none of them knew, what Tanner sure as hell didn't care to learn, was that Michael built the guts of Caldwell Technologies from nothing. I'm talking about the failover systems in Tulsa, the cold storage sinks in Portland, the heat-mapped threat matrix in Jersey. All 13 data centers ran on a latticework of logic and paranoia only Michael understood. Because Michael wrote it. And he never bragged. Never played politics. Just wore the same gray zip-up hoodie, drank his jet black coffee out of that chipped mug that said "still loading," and patched the future while everyone else on Slack debated AI filters and SEO ClickFunnels. I remember this one weekend, July I think, when a thermal spike nearly melted half our compute array in Phoenix. Sierra was at some women in tech brunch with pastel mimosas, and Tanner was God knows where, probably getting a facial. Michael was the only one in the building besides me. He walked in like he'd been summoned, didn't even ask for help, and 10 hours later he left with the logs fixed, 2 drives swapped, and a handwritten postmortem on my desk labeled, "For when someone asks." No one ever did. That's who he was. But once Tanner's daddy handed him the reins, everything changed fast. All of a sudden, it was out with redundant legacy costs and in with Sierra's streamlined innovation plan, which, as far as I could tell, mostly meant replacing competent people with pretty ones and renaming everything in the system with emojis. Michael's department became Ops Dungeon, and she thought that was cute. They moved him off Slack channels, cut his team in half, stopped looping him into the weekly fire drills. By the time the quarterly operations review came up, Tanner didn't even invite him. Said, "Michael's vibe doesn't match the new Caldwell culture." And still, Michael stayed. Not for them, for the system, for the architecture, for the integrity of a thing he built that still mattered, even if the suits had forgotten. Then came that morning. The morning where Tanner walked in late, still chewing on the end of an overpriced protein bar, Sierra glowing like she just finished a TED Talk. They told Michael they were moving in a different direction, gave him a severance envelope that looked like a punchline. That's when he looked at his watch, smiled, not smug, but almost sad, and said the line that's now probably carved into every server cage door in the building. "You have 15 minutes. And now I'm sitting here, watching the Node 4 heartbeat monitor blink yellow. It just went offline, not crashed, disengaged. There's a difference. This isn't a failure, it's a countdown. It started with the chairs. The old boardroom, mahogany table, uncomfortable leather seats, the kind that groaned like they knew every bad decision ever made, was gutted overnight, replaced with clear acrylic cubes and a centerpiece made of succulents spelling out, "Think fresh." I knew the old man was officially out the second I saw Tanner stride in wearing salmon-colored golf shoes and a Bluetooth headset that blinked like a dying star. "Let's pivot into a new rhythm," he said that Monday morning, grinning like he invented time itself. "Caldwell's gonna stop being just reliable. We're going to be disruptively elegant." Whatever the hell that meant. The suits clapped. Michael didn't. He stood near the back, same zip-up hoodie, pen behind his ear, already mapping the new firewall rollout in his head. While Tanner was busy pulling buzzwords out of thin air, Michael was quietly preventing a server failure in Atlanta. But none of that showed up on the KPI dashboard Sierra had just redesigned to look like a Candy Crush scorecard. Sierra. Jesus. She glided in 2 days later with a tiny purse and a bigger attitude, fresh from consulting for a now-defunct app that once promised to revolutionize dog walking. Sierra was all charm and no backup. First thing she did was rebrand infrastructure ops as DG Lite. Second thing she did was hang neon signs that said, "Lag is a mindset." Third, she ordered the network team to install an ambient scent diffuser in the server corridor, something citrusy to boost morale. Michael didn't say a word, just logged everything. Then came the email. Subject line, "Change is good." Sender, Tanner. CC, everyone with a pulse. Buried halfway down was a single line. To accelerate strategic transformation, Michael Grant will transition into an advisory capacity as we streamline operations under our new CTO, Sierra Day. No meeting, no handshake, no thanks. Just a line in a mass email like he was a department printer being retired. He didn't even open it at first. I had to show him on my screen. He read it, nodded once, didn't speak, but I saw it. That flicker in his eyes. Not anger. Michael never wasted energy on anger. It was a kind of quiet recoil, like watching someone knock over a cathedral because they didn't like the paint color. The next week was brutal. Sierra held back-to-back town halls filled with cold brew and Canva slides. Her phrases included gems like digitally native pivoting, serverless soulcraft, and my personal favorite, empathic latency. I sat in the back next to Michael, who scribbled something in his notebook. I peeked. Just 2 words. No backups. Tanner started cutting rolls left and right. Bloat, he called it. The people who stayed were the loud ones. The TikTok energy crowd. People who like to make decisions in Slack threads and add fire emojis to every sentence. Michael? They called him analog, like it was a slur. They stopped inviting him to war rooms. 1 p.m. suggested maybe he could mentor the interns or something. Sierra started saying things like, "Let's not overcomplicate this. Michael tends to spiral into edge case paranoia." Tanner laughed. Michael didn't flinch. But I noticed something strange. He began to stay later. Not because they asked, no one did, but he was rewriting access logs, reviewing authentication cycles, running simulations I didn't recognize. One night, I found him tracing the backup dependencies on a whiteboard in the cold storage hallway, alone, whispering numbers to himself. "What are you doing?" I asked. He didn't look up, just kept drawing, murmuring. If they ever flip the switch without knowing which breaker feeds the breaker, it'll cascade. I didn't understand then, not really, but I do now. HR was always beige. Beige carpet, beige chairs, beige smiles. But that day, it felt colder, like the whole room had been drained of oxygen before we walked in. I was there to take notes. That's what they told me. "Just standard protocol," said Marcy from compliance, her voice wobbling under the weight of a clipboard. But nothing about this meeting was standard. Michael sat in the hard plastic chair like he was waiting at the DMV, arms crossed, hood up, unreadable. The kind of calm that only comes after the storm's already passed, and everyone else just hasn't noticed yet. The door opened behind me. Tanner strutted in, no blazer, just a designer t-shirt that said, "Make systems sexy again." He didn't sit. He didn't greet. He just leaned forward on the table with both palms like he was about to deliver a TED Talk no one asked for. "Michael," he said, drawing it out like he was savoring the syllables. "Appreciate everything you've done, but it's time we upgrade some methodologies. No hard feelings, effective immediately. Thanks for your service." He smirked, as if firing the one man who understood the company's digital spine was some kind of executive flex. Michael didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe, it seemed, for a full 5 seconds. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out his security badge, the original metal one, not the new NFC garbage Sierra rolled out, and placed it on the table with a soft click. He looked at Tanner, finally, eyes sharp enough to draw blood, and said one line. "You've got 15 minutes before the continuity layer checks for my signature." Then he stood up, nodded at me, just me, and walked out. Silence detonated in the room like a pipe burst in the walls. Tanner blinked. "What the hell does that mean?" he asked. No one answered. I chased after Michael, out past the cubicles, past the glass doors, into the elevator vestibule where he stood with his hands in his pockets, waiting for the ding. I caught the edge of his sleeve. "You Planned this? He didn't smile, didn't gloat, just looked at me with that same exhausted honesty I'd seen every time a crisis loomed. I warned them in 21, he said. Clause 13C Continuity Protocol requires biometric confirmation every quarter or it starts quarantining subnets. It's not destructive, but it's recursive. Why didn't you tell? I did, he cut in writing, in the meeting. In the system architecture review, Tanner skipped for a crypto brunch. They called it paranoid, redundant, legacy thinking. The elevator dinged. He stepped in, turned to face me, and for the first time in years, he looked free. Legacy's the only thing holding them up, he said. I just stopped holding. The doors closed. I stood there, hands shaking, heart pounding, the hum of 1,000 servers under my feet like a ticking clock. Upstairs, Tanner was probably already barking at some poor dev, demanding to know how to override the damn thing. But there is no override. Michael didn't build back doors. He built discipline. He built order. He built systems that needed him, not out of ego, but because no one else ever bothered to learn the language he wrote them in. The countdown had started. 15 minutes, and every second, another heartbeat of silence. Sierra was still laughing when the first alert hit. You guys, seriously? He's bluffing. Old-timer drama, she said, twirling her cold brew like it was a magic wand that could banish consequences. Just reroute the authentication sequence to the backup admin pool. Reset the node timers. We have what? A dozen DevOps engineers? Please. Only no one moved. Khalil from East Ops looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. We've tried, he said quietly. He didn't leave a reset sequence, or if he did, it's encrypted under his key set, his biometric key set, she scoffed. So regenerate it, rotate keys. He shook his head. We did. It triggers a failover quarantine. It thinks we're under breach. I watched her face shift. Her jaw clenched a second too long. That's when she realized it wasn't Michael bluffing. It was her drowning. The room dimmed slightly, as if the building itself could feel what was coming. Sierra stormed over to the main terminal in command and typed like she was trying to beat a game timer. Then came the noise, the sharp, rhythmic chime we hadn't heard in over 3 years. Node alert, node alert. Node 4, locked. Houston was down, fully quarantined. No data lost yet, but the server stack was now isolated, cut off, like a room sealed in a submarine, all because it missed Michael's continuity confirmation. Sierra froze. Exactly 60 seconds later, Denver blinked offline, then Miami. It was like watching Christmas lights go out one by one in reverse. The silence got louder. Someone started crying. I don't even know who. Tanner was pacing like a feral dog, mumbling, "This is sabotage. He's nuking the system. Call legal right now." Legal called back. I was standing close enough to hear the voice on speaker. You signed off on this architecture 18 months ago, Mr. Caldwell. Clause 13C was written specifically for continuity protection. No malice, no deletion protocols, just quarantine. Biometric confirmation required every 90 days. You missed the last window. Tanner's voice cracked. Undo it. There was a pause on the line, then a sigh. We can't. Not without him. Sierra collapsed into the nearest chair. Not dramatic, not fainting, just folding. Her smile was gone. Her mask was gone. The buzzwords were dead. All that was left was the wreckage of her hubris and a company built on the assumption that infrastructure was just another subscription tier you could turn off and back on again. I checked my own console. Los Angeles was flickering. Chicago held steady, but not for long. The cascading protocol was elegant, cruel in its elegance, like dominoes falling in perfect mathematical rhythm. Somewhere far away, I imagined Michael sitting in his cabin, maybe in a hoodie, maybe in flannel, watching his old company unravel in real time. And no, he wasn't smiling. I knew that. That wasn't who he was. But I do think he exhaled. Finally. After 5 years of being overlooked, undercredited, and slowly erased, the system he built was now writing the truth in outages and error logs and blinking red lights no one could silence. It wasn't revenge. It was math. And math doesn't care about pastel polos. The call to the old man was not some grand moment. It was desperate. Tanner had been pacing in circles for an hour, snapping at every engineer, throwing jargon around like confetti at a funeral, hoping someone, anyone, could tell him how to stop the bleeding. No one could. So finally, with his ego slumped behind him like a forgotten coat, he stepped into the hallway, yanked out his phone, and called his father. We all heard it, because Tanner forgot to shut the glass door. His voice cracked on the second ring. Hey, Dad, we've got a situation here. Something Michael did before he left. There's a continuity layer. It's locking out data centers. Legal says it's in the architecture documents you signed, but... The voice on the other end didn't hesitate. Just one word. Michael? That was it. Not a question. Not surprise. Just recognition. Like watching someone finally realize the foundation they'd been standing on was never concrete. It was a man. A quiet man who never asked for credit, never demanded attention, and yet had built the entire nervous system of their empire. Tanner didn't say anything for a few seconds after that. He just stared at the wall like it might apologize for not being more forgiving. Inside the war room, the engineers had pivoted to triage mode. People who'd never spoken to Michael before were suddenly pulling up every commit, every log comment, every archived video of him mumbling through a whiteboard session. And what they found wasn't chaos. It was control. Michael's code wasn't a mess of legacy hacks or spaghetti logic. It was pristine, version-controlled, documented down to the byte. Every line came with a breadcrumb trail. But following it felt like chasing a ghost, because it all led back to systems no one had ever bothered to learn. Why is it all routed through Stonegate Protocol? Someone muttered, scrolling furiously. I raised my head. That's from the 2019 breach. Remember? When the ransomware worm got into the staging clusters. Blank stares. Of course they didn't remember. That was before most of them were hired, before the branding refresh, before Sierra's pastel dashboards. Back then, Caldwell nearly lost everything. The old man freaked. Michael stayed 76 hours straight in the cold server room, writing contingency layers, fallbacks, live cleanse scripts, and, most critically, a biometric confirmation loop that couldn't be bypassed unless the system knew you were him, or that he trained you. Which, of course, he didn't, because no one ever asked. And when he offered, they ignored him. Guys, one junior sysadmin said, eyes wide, voice shaky. He embedded training scripts, but they're encrypted too. Says unlock only with clearance, grant M. Like a password? Someone else asked. No, like clearance, as in you had to be on his trust list. The screen in the center of the room started flickering again. Chicago was dropping. I saw one of the new VPs start sweating so hard his shirt stuck to the chair. That's when I realized what this was. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even about control. This was documentation as defense, architecture as authority. Every time they called Michael paranoid, slow, outdated, they missed the fact that he wasn't building for now. He was building for failure. He was building for when the bluff wore off and systems stopped caring about optics. And in that moment, surrounded by the blinking failures of every short-sighted decision they ever made, I saw it on their faces. This isn't a Michael problem. This is a no Michael problem, and it was only just beginning. It started with a text from a number labeled HR emergency line, the kind of thing usually reserved for wildfires or federal subpoenas. Not a man with a beard and a thermos full of black coffee sitting in a cabin 3 hours from the nearest Starbucks. Michael glanced at it. Didn't even tap to open, just let the screen dim while he stirred his coffee, slow and steady, like he had nowhere to be and all the time in the world to not go there. The second text came 5 minutes later, then a call. He let it ring. Then came the email. Subject line, urgent, request for consultation. Michael clicked it open, not because he was curious, just thorough. He read it once, sighed through his nose, and tapped reply. Out of office, permanently. They didn't take the hint. I was in the room when the call came through to the war room. HR had looped in legal, who had pulled in ops, who had summoned Sierra, looking pale now, her hair tied back like that somehow made her more credible. And finally, Tanner himself, who was doing that thing rich kids do when they realize the universe doesn't have a customer service line. Get him on the line, Tanner barked. Whatever it takes. So they called. I don't know what they expected. Gratitude, desperation, a dramatic entrance with violins playing in the background. What they got was Michael's voice, calm and almost amused, piped in through the boardroom speaker. "I'm retired." There was a pause. You could hear the collective stomach drop. "Mr. Grant," Marcy from HR said, over-enunciating like he was hard of hearing, "we understand there's been a disruption. We would like to formally invite you back in a consulting capacity to—" Michael cut her off. "You mean the architecture I documented in full, submitted for review, and was told was too legacy-focused and paranoid? That architecture?" Tanner leaned forward. "Name your price." Another pause. Then a ding. A PDF appeared in Legal's inbox with a single highlighted clause from Michael's original infrastructure contract. Clause 13C, subpoint D. Any unauthorized modifications, removals, or overrides to the original system design void all indemnity protections and forfeit continuity liabilities to the contractor. Tanner turned to Legal. "What the hell does that mean?" The lawyer looked like he'd swallowed a stapler. "It means," Michael's voice said through the speaker, "you broke the chain. You bypassed system review without my sign-off. You're not asking me to consult. You're asking me to admit liability for your changes. That's not consulting. That's volunteering to drown with you." "You can't just walk away," Sierra snapped, panic finally bleeding through her usual gloss. "I didn't walk," Michael said. "You escorted me out. Big difference." There was no gloating, no victory lap, just a man who had already made peace with his exit. Tanner tried again. "Look, we can pay. Whatever." Michael interrupted once more. "You're offering money to a man who lives in a cabin, eats beans by choice, and built redundancy protocols for fun. What exactly do you think I still want?" Silence. And then, just as he was about to hang up, he added one final line. "Try asking someone who listened when I offered to teach them." Click. He was gone. The boardroom stayed quiet, not tense, not angry, just hollow. Like the building itself realized it had been gutted of the only person who ever took its bones seriously. For the first time since this all began, I saw Tanner lean back, hands limp, no longer pretending. And I swear, in that silence, the hum of the failing data nodes started to sound like regret. They said the jet landed at 3:47 a.m., no press release, no entourage, no private car. Just an old man with silver hair and a cane that hit the marble lobby of Caldwell HQ like a gavel every time it struck the floor. Caldwell Sr. didn't say a word to the receptionist. Didn't acknowledge security. Walked straight through the front entrance like he still owned the lease, because in a very quiet, very legal way, he probably still did. The door to the executive conference room burst open around 4 a.m., mid-emergency meeting. Half the room was on laptops, trying to salvage Atlanta and Toronto. The other half was pretending not to cry. Tanner was in the middle of shouting something about failover back-channel auth strings when he froze. The room shifted like gravity had just realigned itself around one man. "Everyone out," Caldwell Sr. said, voice low but harder than the table he slammed his palm against. No one argued. I stayed behind the glass. I had a clear view of everything. Tanner tried to recover, to smile, to maybe play the good ideas game. "Dad, look, I know how this looks, but Sierra and I were trying to modernize. We didn't know Michael had. You fired the guy holding up our entire infrastructure?" The old man didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Each word landed like a falling brick. "Are you out of your goddamn mind?" Tanner paled. "It's more complicated than that." "No, it's not." Caldwell Sr. pulled out a manila folder thicker than the hiring contracts for 10 departments and tossed it on the table. "You never read these. I did. Every clause, every signature, every warning. Michael Grant wrote the digital foundation of this company. He is the continuity layer. You unplugged the heart because it didn't match your He stopped himself. A long pause. Then, "Get him on the phone. Now." Tanner fumbled with his phone, missed the unlock twice. Finally, he tapped the number. It rang once. Then Michael picked up. There was a moment of total silence, as if both ends of the line had entered vacuum space. "Michael," the old man said. Another pause. Then Michael's voice, quiet, steady, emotionless. "Hope you're enjoying the continuity cascade." The old man exhaled like someone had punched him in the lungs. He didn't argue. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't try to charm. He just said, "I understand." "Do you?" Michael replied. "Because your son doesn't. Your board doesn't. And the system doesn't care." "I do now," he said. Tanner was mouthing something. Maybe an apology. Maybe a protest. Caldwell didn't look at him. "We need you back," he said finally, his voice brittle with something close to regret. "No," Michael said. Not with anger. Not with pride. Just finality. "I left so you could see what I held. Now you're seeing it." Click. The call ended. Not with a bang. Not with a threat. With truth. I watched the old man close his eyes for a full 10 seconds before opening them again. He looked across the table at Tanner, who could barely hold eye contact. "You're suspended," he said quietly. No yelling, no fireworks, just a man delivering the only sentence that made sense. Then he left the room, as silently as he entered, and in the distance I could see Los Angeles blinking offline. The cascade continued. The press got a hold of it by noon, not the technical details, of course, just the humiliating ones. 13 Caldwell data centers, hit by silent cascade failure, read one headline. "System lockout tied to fired engineer," said another, and the one that really lit the fire under the boardroom chairs, "Paranoid or prepared, inside the fall of a legacy tech giant. Sierra was gone by sunset. No goodbye email, no farewell cupcakes. Just a silent calendar block at 4:17 p.m. labeled Final Exit Interview and a deactivated badge 2 minutes later. I saw her in the lobby, sunglasses on, head down, tapping out something on her phone like it still mattered. She didn't look up when the doors closed behind her. As for Tanner, he didn't come back. After Senior's suspension notice, HR slid his security deactivation order across the table like a final report card. There was no discussion, no spin. The board met the next morning. Everyone showed up early, hair combed, suits darker. The air carried the scent of burned pride and high-dollar cologne. Legal ran them through the risk exposure report. Finance explained the projected cost of recovery. Then the CTO seat, still warm from Sierra's exit, was left conspicuously vacant. Someone finally asked, "Can we get him back?" Meaning Michael. The old man nodded once. "I already tried." They all looked at me. Not because I had answers, but because I was the last person who still spoke about Michael like he wasn't a ghost. I opened my inbox and read aloud the only reply he'd sent after the board's formal request. "I'm not coming back. But resilience doesn't die with me, it just moves quietly." Below that, a name and a number. They stared. One of the board members muttered, "Who's that?" I smiled. "That's Keisha. She shadowed Michael for 3 years. You all met her once, at the holiday party. You thought she was catering staff because she carried her own plate." Silence. Then Caldwell Sr. chuckled. Not cruelly, not bitterly, just knowingly. "Let's talk to Keisha." And just like that, the tide turned. Not dramatically, not with a bang, but like a system slowly rebooting, layer by layer, brick by brick. They flew her in from Asheville. She walked into the room wearing jeans and a windbreaker and carrying a folder labeled Legacy Dependencies Grant Protocols. She didn't pitch. She didn't beg. She sat down, flipped to page 1, and said, "Let's start with the continuity root locks." Within an hour, she had mapped the cascade path, identified the unlock intervals, and explained which systems would self-heal once manual clearance was restored. She didn't replace Michael, but she understood him, and that was enough. The board didn't reinstall a CTO. Instead, they created a new role, Chief Resilience Officer. Not flashy, not glamorous, but permanent, unskippable, designed not to wow investors, but to prevent collapse. And the job description? Every applicant had to read Michael's original system design end to end. No edits, no simplifications, just his work as it was meant to be read. I never saw Michael again in person, but I heard from him one more time. He sent me a postcard, no return address. Just a photo of a river in Colorado and a note scrawled in faded ink. Some systems aren't built to be seen, just to hold everything else in place. That was enough. He never asked for revenge. He built a legacy, and when the building nearly fell, it was his hands, though absent, that held it long enough for someone else to catch it. It was quiet in the new office. Not the suffocating kind of quiet we used to get after an outage when everyone held their breath waiting for blame to land, but a stillness that felt earned, structural, like something had been rebuilt properly this time. The new guy, Devon, fresh out of MIT and 2 coffees deep, sat at the terminal in Ops A. The lights were low, just the hum of machines and the occasional clack of keys echoing in the background. He booted up the new diagnostic suite. First run since reinstating the fallback nodes. The screen lit up. Grant Core V1.AON.0. Below it, a single quote. White text on black. Silence isn't absence, it's infrastructure. Devon stared for a moment. He didn't get it. Not fully, not yet. But I did. I walked past him and paused at the door. Let me know if the system prompts you for Keystone Trust. That's the final lock. You'll need legacy clearance. Whose clearance? He asked, frowning slightly. Michael Grant, I said. But don't worry. He left someone behind who can speak fluent redundancy. As I turned to leave, I added, Oh, and if you ever meet him, tell him we owe him one. He nodded, still staring at the screen like it might blink Morse code at him. Up in the Rockies, the sun hadn't quite crested yet. The air was thin, clean, the kind that tasted like pine needles and unspoken boundaries. Michael sat on the porch of a small wood-frame cabin, boots up on the railing, mug in hand. Coffee, no sugar, no cream, no pretense. The mountains didn't move for anyone. Neither did he. His phone buzzed once on the table beside him. He didn't check it. He didn't need to. The buzz stopped. A soft wind passed through the trees, rustling leaves like code in motion. He took another sip. Far below, in a city of blinking lights and revolving CEOs, someone finally understood that silence wasn't absence. It was intention, design, legacy. He leaned back, let the mug rest against his chest, eyes closed. And in the space between that breath and the next, the system held, like it always had. Final thought. Spoken to no one, heard by everything. You should never fire the guy who built your skeleton, especially not for someone who thinks servers run on vibes.